So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for joining our event and for attending our last session of the day of the afternoon. Joining me in this session is Laura. She is a certified advanced resume writer, and she crafts strategic career documents and provides one-on-one high-impact career coaching to help motivated professionals get the jobs they desire. Through a collaborative process, Laura employs a relaxed conversational style that allows clients to feel comfortable sharing their career aspirations. By asking the right questions, she unlocks accomplishments and identify personal characteristics that are used to create unique professional brands. Thank you so much, Laura, for joining our event today again and speaking. And I just want to remind everyone, just as I put in the chat there, to ask as many questions as possible at the end, throughout the presentation, at the end of the presentation, however you'd like, and just to utilize the fact that we have these speakers here today answering all of the questions from our job seekers. So yeah, that's all. So I'll stop sharing my audio and my video, and then I'll try to come back at the end just to help close things out, but I'll be in and around the area just checking on other parts of the event.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sandra.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Hello, everyone. So I'm going to be talking today about how to leverage LinkedIn in your job search and in your career in general. It's a fantastic platform to engage with other professionals. So I will say, for those of you who were in the Mark's session just prior, fabulous session on self-awareness, and I hope you got a chance to see it, because everything that he was talking about is basically the work, the self-work that is required in order to create a professional brand. And when it comes to your personal marketing documents, as well as your presence, LinkedIn would be part of that presence, your social media presence. Having a strong sense of self-awareness and having a brand that you believe in is critical to developing your confidence and conveying your value with clarity and with that sense of purpose. So I strongly encourage you to take up Mark's advice and really do that self-reflective work, dig deep, and figure out exactly the value that you have to offer. It just makes the rest of the marketing process so much easier. Okay, and with that, let's talk about LinkedIn. So LinkedIn's been around for a while now. It is heavily used by recruiters and talent acquisition specialists, managers, anybody looking to hire talent. They're sourcing a lot of their candidates on LinkedIn. I'm a member of Career Directors International, and I run a column called Recruiter Voice. And one of the questions we put out was, what job search platforms do you use in order to source candidates? And every single recruiter across Canada, the United States, and Australia were like, oh, we don't really use job boards that frequently. We source most of our candidates on LinkedIn. So that's just goes to show you how critical having visibility on LinkedIn is in your job search. So in order to talk about LinkedIn, I thought the best way is to just pull up a LinkedIn profile and we'll walk through it together. So that's what I'm going to do. So just give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen. And if I'm looking back and forth, it's because in order to share my screen, I have to use 2 monitors. So there we have it. So everyone should be able to see LinkedIn right now. Okay. So as I mentioned, we are going to talk about LinkedIn, and the best way to do so is to just look at a live example. So first, what I want to do is, before you start making any changes to your LinkedIn, I just want to show you an important couple areas that you can adjust in your privacy and settings before you start changing anything. So if you go to your little me icon, click on settings and privacy, and I know it's a little bit slow. Here we go. Come down to visibility and scroll down. You'll see a section that says share profile updates with your network. So just make sure this is toggled to no. Otherwise, every time you make a little tweak and save it, your update's going to get blasted out to your whole network. And that it can get a little bit annoying, but it can also tip off your current employer if you are actively searching while employed. Another area that I like to just raise awareness around is in the data privacy section. If you scroll down to Microsoft Word, I always advise people to turn off Microsoft Word so that it does not pull phrasing from your LinkedIn profile in order to help people with who pay for Resume Assist. If you've put all that time and attention into developing your own profile, then that's branding that you've developed. You don't necessarily want to share that with other people because it should be unique to you. Okay, so let's pull up a profile. My friend Philippe has graciously given me permission to use his profile as an example. And we're basically going to walk through it from top to bottom. I'll try to keep an eye on the questions. However, I will say, just for the flow, save them until closer to the end, and then I can go through them one at a time and make sure I don't miss any. Okay, so we've turned off, adjusted a couple of security settings. So now let's start with the banner photo. So banner photo, it usually ends up with the default. However, there's all sorts of great free tools you can use, such as Canva, in order to create a custom banner photo. It just gives your profile that extra little oomph and makes it more engaging. So check out Canva. Your profile picture. Now, unfortunately, looks shouldn't matter, but they still do. And your profile picture is that very first kind of human connection that your audience makes with you. So what do you want to project to that audience? Most people want to connect with those who seem like they're friendly and approachable. So a few little quick tips for creating a really good social media profile picture for LinkedIn is, number one, make sure you take a high resolution picture. It doesn't have to be like a fancy headshot or from a fancy camera. You can use your cell phone, but just make sure it's high resolution. Make sure you have really good natural lighting. Make sure you're smiling, and make sure that there's, it's not too zoomed in. Have adequate room around you so that you can zoom into where you want it. And there are also lots of really great free tools you can use in order to remove the background and customize the color. So if you have a branding color you like to use throughout your marketing materials, why not match that to your profile picture? It just gives it a little bit of extra pizzazz and gives it that polished look. Okay, so here we have the headline. Now, most people have the standard headline, which is whatever their current position is, current position in company. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially if you're currently employed. However, if you are trying to attract people to your page, then you want to try to make this, inject as many keywords into this as possible. So thinking from the perspective of that tech recruiter, or of that hiring manager who's looking to add someone to their team. What keywords would they use in order to search for someone like yourself? You ideally want to show up as a top search result for those types of people in the industries and in the types of roles that you're looking for. So think about the keywords that they would use and make sure you can include those into your headline. Now, what's better yet is if you can tell people what you do and how you do it, right? So how you add value, how you bring a sense of passion. It gives you kind of boils down everything that you do into like one little tagline. Now, if you combine both things and create a tagline that tells people exactly what you do while also incorporating keywords, well, that's all the better. So I would encourage Philippe here to, if he were to explore the market, to change up his headline and try to create a tagline that fits with his brand. Okay, a couple things that Philippe does not have, I will show you on my own profile, are this name pronounced. I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear my screen.
Laura Hartnell.
Basically, this is a fantastic tool that LinkedIn added last year in order to make it really easy for people to learn how to pronounce your name before they call you. It's incredibly sad, but I have heard that some recruiters will not call a great candidate because they're afraid they're going to mispronounce their name. So this really is a fantastic tool. It takes away any excuse not to call you. You can also add your pronouns. Totally optional. If you're in like the social work or mental health field, I think it's a great idea because it makes your profile more inclusive. But of course, that's optional, but it's there. So let's scroll down to the About section, previously called Summary. So you have 2,600 characters that you can use in your About section. And I really want to emphasize the importance of having a strong About section and really telling your story here. Because firstly, people are kind of lazy. So the further they have to scroll in order to learn about you, the less they're going to find out. So if you can load up some of your achievements, if you can load up, what it is you're all about in your About section, then this is really a golden opportunity. So use up those characters. Make sure though that the way you're presenting the information is easy to read. So big blocks of text are difficult for people to read through and decipher the information from. So for Philippe, he had 3 core areas that he really focused on that made him effective in his role. So we emphasized each of those 3, and then we followed that up by 3 notable achievements. There's this thing in writing called the rule of 3. I'm a believer in it. So if you can do things in groupings of 3, people seem to really appreciate that. So when it comes to a strong About section, once again, telling a story. This is where, if you watched Mark's presentation, the deep questions that he really challenged you to ask yourself are going to be important to telling that compelling story. And making sure that you're backing up any of your claims with solid evidence. And evidence can come from anywhere. It doesn't necessarily have to be paid work experience, right? Transferable skills are hugely important. Mindset is hugely important. And if you've done things that are relevant from hobbies or other interests or volunteer work, this is where you can include that information in order to sell yourself. Now, with LinkedIn, because it's a professional network, but it is a social network, you have that opportunity to talk in first person. So I still see those very third person kind of stuffy executive bios in here. I encourage people to move away from that. Speak directly to your audience. Say I, say we, say me. That's totally okay. You can elaborate from just your professional experience, and you can include other things that make you a more well-rounded person. So it's totally okay to talk about, what got you interested in the field of work that you're currently doing, or what you had to overcome in order to get there. There's certainly no wrong way to write an About section, so you can certainly get as creative as you want. Now, the activity feed here, this is something I always check. If I'm looking to connect with somebody, or maybe I want to apply to a job and address the cover letter or some element of the application directly to the hiring manager, and I want to look into them a little bit first, the activity feed is a great place to check out. Because you can see what the person cares about, what they kind of content they engage with. And in some cases, if it's someone higher up in the organization, a founder or a member of the C-suite that you're looking to make a connection with, they often will have their own thought leadership. So they put out content of their own. They maybe have a podcast. So always look at that and see if there's something that you can share some insights on and become a part of that conversation. So heading on down to the experience section. Once again, it's great to always load up these sections with lots of content. The reason that this is important is, well, you want to continue to tell your story, of course, but when it comes to LinkedIn Recruiter, so LinkedIn Insights, whenever a recruiter is looking for a candidate, it's going to pull those profiles and populate those search results based on explicit skills and implicit skills. So once again, we're talking about keywords. So explicit skills will be the keywords that you've listed in your headline and specifically in the skills section, which we'll talk about down below. But implicit skills are what it pulls from the rest of what you've written. So the content that's inside your experience sections. So when it comes to your experience sections, you can provide a high-level overview of what your day-to-day looks like, and then dive into some key achievements. Now, LinkedIn is a little bit more sensitive than your resume, so be mindful of any dollar values or particular clients you worked with that you are not supposed to mention. Don't give away any proprietary information. Okay. So one thing I will mention, for those of you that are currently unemployed, LinkedIn's algorithm unfortunately favors people who have a current work experience. So there is a way you can get around this. And as you can see, Philippe did this at one point in time. You can create a job, a current job experience, and just use your own name as the company. And think of this as an extension of the About section where you can elaborate on the value that you bring, the key skills that you have. And that way, it is in favor with LinkedIn's algorithm and the way it will pull top search results. Okay, so follow that same method for the rest of your experience sections. You can go back as far as you want. It's completely up to you. From an employer standpoint, similar rule of thumb applies with the resume, is that they're usually most interested in the most recent 5 to 10 years. But if your experience is really varied, or if your older experience is more relevant to the direction you're heading than your more recent experience, then of course you will want to highlight that. So let's scroll down. Education sections. There's licenses and certifications, volunteer work. Fill in all the additional sections that are applicable to you. And then here's where we have the skills section. So you have 50 skills you can include, and try to include ones that are searchable. And when I say more searchable, here, let me scroll down to the skills section. Oops, I can keep going. So if you were to add a new skill, it's going to pre-populate certain things. So let's see. So let's say you do IT infrastructure. Okay, you want to try to pick something that comes up as a pre-populated drop-down option, and that's just because that indicates to you that it's a more commonly searched for skill. Now, I don't have premium, but if I did, one thing that's kind of cool about premium is if you're in the job section and you want to apply to a job, it will actually show you the top, I don't think it'll show me because I don't have premium, but it will actually show you the top skills, the top 10 skills that they're looking for that position. And it will highlight the ones that are a match based on what's on your profile. So if you have premium, this is one area where I think it can be helpful in a job search, is to get that additional analytics and then adjust your profile based on those keywords. However, I'm going to go back and show you how you can do that from your profile. So your dashboard, so this is where I was showing you on Philippe's profile, his activity. So this is where, if you're looking at your own profile, you can see who's viewed your profile, who's viewed your posts, and your search appearances. So here's where a lot of people don't really pay attention, but I think is kind of interesting and can be very helpful to tweaking the keywords that you incorporate. So here we have a breakdown of how people found me based on searches. So the companies that they work for, the typical titles that they have. But down here is where it tells you what words they used in order to find me. So they found me with the word writer. So, I mean, that's accurate, I suppose, but but you can take a look at those words and then decide, if something keeps coming up that is not an area you want to focus on, you don't want to be contacted for those kinds of jobs or come up in those types of search results, then take a look through your profile. Maybe those keywords are in your profile and you want to try to remove them or reword them. Okay, so we've talked about how you can set up your profile for success, but now let's talk about how you can engage on the platform. Ideally, you want to gain visibility through that engagement. So through connecting with other people in your industry and contributing to those conversations, what's new, what's trending, sharing your insights, sharing tips and tricks, what's worked for you, what hasn't. And of course, I would encourage everyone to try to be respectful when doing so. So here's a great way to start engaging. Commenting is super crucial. So for trying to find people to follow that are top voices in your industry who put out a lot of content around a particular subject area that you is very relevant to your job, find some people in that space and then follow them. So there's no links here, but I'm just looking up, gives a name of this person and what they talk about. So go onto LinkedIn and follow that person. And then as soon as you see them post something, add a comment. So this person, I'm not going to comment on it, but let's say HR, well, that's a job, but say this HR person is sharing a really great tip on some kind of HR strategy, and I'm in HR as well. So I would add a comment as soon as I see that and add to that conversation. It can't just be like, I agree or good stuff. It has to add something to the conversation. So you can reflect on what that meant to you or how you've leveraged a similar, a tactic in your own role in order to spur that conversation even further. This is great because as you comment on people's profiles, it will show up in other people's feeds who are second degree connections to you. So once again, it's all about enhancing your visibility. And the reason I like to point people in the direction of, influencers in their industry is because you want to show up in conversations that are in your industry. Of course, there's a lot we can learn from engaging with people in different industries. I think that's always fabulous. But let's say 80% of the engagement should be around what's relevant in your field, because you want to show up, you want to enhance your visibility to the people in your field. Okay. I'm going to leave it there because there's only 3 minutes left. So let me stop sharing my screen and I'm going to see if there's any questions. Whoop. Hold on. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so what do you write in about section for someone who's changing a career? Any number of things. You want to focus your LinkedIn profile around the job that you want, not the job that you're currently doing. Now, of course, that gets more complicated when you're currently working for someone and you want to have more of a covert, passive job search so that you don't tip off your current employer. So the strategy and what you include in your about section will depend a little bit on your circumstances. So assuming that you don't, you're not currently working or you're not worried about your employer finding out and getting upset and having to have that very awkward conversation, then you can, oh, and I see now that you are working, then you can, if that's the case, then you can be very direct and talk about what's led you to where you are now and why you're interested in making this shift, and what kind of transferable skills that you have in order to make you suitable for those roles, or anything you've read about the future of that kind of work, Self-directed learning is fantastic. So courses or ways you've engaged with what's relevant in that type of work, that can be really cool to highlight as well. So if you are currently working and you want to disguise all of that, you just have to get really creative with how you convey it. Try to neutralize your language so that if you're in an industry or a position that has like really is kind of niche and has a lot of jargon, try to eliminate as much of that jargon as you can or downplay it, and instead use a language that's more can easily position you in other kind of sectors as well, or other positions as well. You want to try to incorporate kind of a combination of your current skill set and the skill set that you're working towards, and that would be relevant in your position that you're targeting. Okay, how to use keywords when changing careers. Okay, so I touched on that a bit already. How do we write our experience summary when we are transitioning into a different career? Will that confuse the recruiters to what we want and what we can offer? So like I said before, position your LinkedIn profile towards the role that you want to target. You're absolutely right. You have to be careful about the way you convey this information, because it can be confusing to the audience without telling that story very clearly. If you have too many kind of competing, if you have too many keywords in your headline that are very kind of competing roles, or roles that roles or skills that wouldn't typically be seen together, that can be confusing. So like I said, you have to be really creative about the way you convey that story, but always try to position yourself in the future while learning from the past. What should I highlight in the about section if I do not have any relevant experience in my field, such as new grad without co-op? So if you're a new graduate, I mean, the sky's the limit on what you could talk about. You can talk about what you learned in your education, any particular projects you worked on that you were really proud of, where you see the future of that industry, or if you've applied your skill set in other areas outside of a co-op or work experience, like a hobby. I also think it's great when, depending on the role, if you can find ways to talk to people, find out what software they're using, what tools they're using in the companies that you're interested in, and then see if there's a free version you can mess around on, and start putting together your own projects and then highlighting those on LinkedIn. That can be a great way to demonstrate that you're very proactive, you're working at sharpening your skills, and that it'll make you a nice, smooth transition into that paid opportunity or that co-op placement. Okay, any other questions? I think we'll leave it there for today. For any of you who have attended today who want to connect with me on LinkedIn, certainly feel free. I'll just copy my profile URL in here, and feel free to connect. And if you come up with additional questions, reach out and ask. I'm always happy to share any tips I might have. And I put out regular content around job search and personal marketing. So feel free to ask away, and I'll be sure to point you in the right direction. But thank you so much for attending. It was really great to have you here.